Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. Here are some of the stories we're covering this week. Out of Amsterdam and into Darfur, the radio station that beams news and information to citizens left in the dark. It's been more than 15 years now since the conflict in Darfur in western Sudan began, but there's no end in sight to the fighting. The government continues its attacks on insurgents and the region's non-Arab and African civilians, a campaign that the United Nations has called a genocide, one that has led to the International Criminal Court's indictment of Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. However, with the authorities preventing journalists going in and information coming out, Darfur has turned into a black hole for news. As a result, one broadcaster has proven to be critically important, Radio Dabanga. Beaming in from Amsterdam to remain beyond the reach of government censors, the station has become a rare source of independent news for what it says are its more than 3 million daily listeners. But the broadcaster's funding is drying up, meaning that Dabanga could soon see its doors closed for good. The Listening Post's Johanna Hoosnow from Amsterdam on the role of Radio Dabanga in a region that has seen its media environment blacked out by design.
مقتل 3 نازحين وجرح 12 في هجوم للدعم السريع على معسكرات غارسيلا.
For a family on the run in Darfur, unsure whether the next village will be any safer than the one they just fled, Radio Dabanga can mean the difference between life and death.
الطيران الحكومي بيواصل قصفه لشركة جبل لليوم الثالث على التوالي وبيقتل وبيجرح عدد من المواطنين.
The small station, run by exiled Darfuri thousands of miles away, has been trying to keep those back home safe, as well as providing listeners with much-needed insight into one of the most sealed-off regions in the world. Editor-in-Chief Kamal Elsadig says that Dabanga has become much more than just a shortwave radio station.
It's become the lungs with which Sudanese people breathe. By reporting on security, safety, displacement, health, issues fundamental to the survival of Sudanese people. For example, there was a cholera breakout which the government denied, claiming it was severe diarrhea. Dabanga didn't just create awareness, it also offered advice. Or when the war was raging in Darfur, we were informing people where the fighting was taking place, so they had information on how to get to safety. Technically, Dabanga has saved their lives.
While other media outlets in Sudan are censored, Dabanga's location in Amsterdam allows its journalists to report freely. The government and its state media outlets claim the Darfur crisis is over, but Dabanga tells a different story. They report on the absence of security, the poor conditions in the camps, the number of victims, casualties, the number of those displaced. The government doesn't want that side of the crisis to come out.
It's a known fact that they've created a total media blackout. But millions of Darfuri want to know what's happening around them. Unfortunately, none of the mainstream media here will cover the conflict. But because Radio Dabanga operates from outside, and those providing the station with information are unknown to the authorities, it makes it much safer for them to do their work.
That network of citizen journalists, often undercover, as well as ordinary civilians, are what Dabanga relies on to produce its reports. Via their phones and social media, they send information back to Dabanga's headquarters in Holland, shedding light on a region that the government prefers to keep in the dark.
We receive more than 100 calls a day, and our Dabanga WhatsApp can get up to 1,000 messages. It's all preliminary information that our wide network of reporters on the ground then verifies and authenticates. Only after careful investigation do we publish stories. This is what gives Dabanga its credibility and fame. When we report to the people in Sudan, we support our news with evidence from the ground.
Radio Dabanga's dependence on civilians as sources of information has been used by President Omar al-Bashir's administration to discredit the station. Ever since Dabanga's launch in 2008, Khartoum has gone to great lengths to silence the broadcaster, questioning its credibility or even cutting its signal. The government body that regulates the media is the National Council for Press and Publications. According to its Secretary General, Dabanga is in the business of spreading fake news.
It's fundamentally important for the credibility of news that all sources must be verified, as well as objective, void of any personal or ulterior motives. Much or maybe most of Dabanga's news items lack such veracity. This was most evident in 2014 when they spread erroneous news reports about an alleged mass rape in the area of Tebet. Those alleged mass rapes caused widespread hysteria, but when proper investigations were conducted by unbiased governmental organizations, the information turned out to be false.
There was a mass rape of girls and women, over 200, ordered by the regular army commander of the nearby base. The story itself and the nature of this extraordinarily barbaric act and who ordered it, that all came originally from Radio Dabanga. Now, some of the details had to be corrected, but Human Rights Watch, a number of months later, would confirm everything that Radio Dabanga was reporting. Who is to say, though, that a mistake has been made? Who is the alternative source of information?
There is one, the United Nations and African Union Joint Peacekeeping Mission in Darfur, UNAMID. But there have been serious questions about the accuracy and credibility of its reports. The operation was set up in 2007 to protect civilians and monitor the situation on the ground. But in 2013, its former spokesperson, Aisha al-Basri, blew the whistle, saying that for years, UNAMID used every trick to conceal the truth about deliberate government bombings, mass killings, and forced displacement of unarmed civilians.
The UN African Union mission is an important source of information in Darfur. However, I don't believe it paints the complete picture because these very same organizations have interests that converge with that of the Sudanese government. Sure, it provides us with significant information because journalists can't access the area at all. But those agencies fall short of giving us a comprehensive picture of the situation.
The UN African Union mission in Darfur is almost worthless as a reporting source. UNAMID just lied shamelessly, claimed that they've been completely successful, that all their goals have been achieved, there was no fighting, just small arms, banditry, and this was nonsense, and they knew it was nonsense, but they couldn't afford to say publicly just how great the failure was. They won't say anything that Khartoum doesn't allow them to say. And in that sense, without the lifeline of Radio Dabanga News, the lives and livelihoods of people in Darfur are at deep, deep risk.
Despite the critically important role that Radio Dabanga plays for Sudanese audiences, the broadcaster now finds its future under threat. The station relies on funds from a consortium of EU states and NGOs. But European governments are now working with the Sudanese authorities to fight terrorism and to stem the flow of refugees heading north. And that is having serious effects on the station's funding. It's drying up, which could mean that Radio Dabanga's days are numbered.
The crux of the issue is the collaboration between the Sudanese government and the international community, whose priorities have shifted substantially. Terrorism and immigration seem to be their only priority nowadays, and issues like press freedom have taken a back seat. If Radio Dabanga were to close, not only would citizens lose their daily dose of information, it would be a great loss to press freedom in Sudan.
I think without Radio Dabanga, we lose touch with what's happening in Darfur. Because there are no journalists, because there's no human rights reporting presence, we don't have any way of knowing where people are starving, where malnutrition is extreme, where rape is occurring, where farmers are being driven off their lands, murdered by Arab militias. Khartoum's goal has always been to make it a black box, to make it an invisible place, and they're very, very close to success at this point. If we lose Radio Dabanga, we lose sight of Darfur.
Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga, Radio Dabanga.